All right, so the first thing and most important thing, one of the most important things, is surfacing your boards when you're doing inlays. So I've got this in, I've got it locked down with some wedges, little spacer there. Everything is solid, 1/4 inches in. I've already zeroed it. We're gonna run it back and forth across, get it nice and flat, flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, flip it back, and then start carving in the female portion of this. So let's rock and roll. All right, side one done. Let's flip it over and get the other side completed. Now you see this thing here, this board. If you're going to do something like that, be very careful. You don't want when you zero the machine, you don't want it to come over and slam into that board. So when you're finished, you need to take that out. But I'm using that to stop the dust from going over there by the controller. So if you're curious about what that's all about, that's what that's all about. All right, I'm going to flip it over. Before I do, though, I am going to dust that off because I don't want anything underneath the board. I don't want anything that changes the flatterness of it all. What I'm doing is going around the edge with this sandpaper just to get rid of that. There's a little edge there, and I'm getting rid of that. Again, so it doesn't affect the flatness of the board. That's going to get cut off anyway, but I just want to get it out of my way. Solid. That is nothing more than a spacer. When you do this with the wedges, make sure you put your wedges in. Sometimes it has a tendency to want to push up on your board. Make sure you're paying attention to that. I hold pressure down and then I tap them in. Checking to make sure it doesn't move. All right, let's bring it back over. We'll re-zero and then we'll cut the rest of it off, or surface the rest of it off. I can feel the ripple right there. And then we'll be able to flip it back to the front side. I don't like this mark. And turn this into the female actual cutting board. And this time I'm going to put the dust boot back on because back and forth is pretty straightforward. You all have seen that a million times. And I don't like cleaning up dust if I don't have to. So let's rock and roll with this side. And if you're wondering what the blue tape is for, with this particular dust boot, if you put it on this way, you got to really pay attention. But it's thinner here than it is here, and it hits the Z gantry or Z lift if you put it on the wrong way, so blue goes to blue. Straightforward, easy stuff. All right, and now I've got this Downtown Jenny 1/8 inch. We're going to start turning this thing into the female actual cutting board now. I know this booger is sharp, so I'm not going to take any chances. We're going to switch to that. And in order to do that, I need to switch to a different collet. Pop that one out. When you put these in, you put them in and they should snap into place. You should feel them snap like that. Sounds like the UPS guys here. Atlas is going crazy. He likes to let people know it wouldn't be a good idea to break into the house. All right, so I'll lock this guy down. I'm only going to zero for Z now, obviously. And then we'll start cutting the female portion of this out. All right, we're going to switch back to the 1/4" collet now and go with a 15-degree full tapered V-bit. That V-bit will be used on the males and the females. We won't change to a different angle. If you haven't seen the video already, check it out. I'll show you how to do these inlays with offsets rather than changing the start depth. Much, much easier. Again, we'll zero off the same spot and we'll rock and roll with the V-bit. All right, the male's cut out for the name and the date, but there's a couple of things I wanted to point out to you here. I learned a trick. So I made a mistake. I didn't oversize the stock enough to give me room to cut it. It actually drove this drove this clamp off of the stock. So here's a little trick I came up with. I took that piece of wood right there, some CA glue, slid the clamp back quick, CA glued that little chunk of wood to the edge of this, and then use the clamp on the top of that chunk of wood. This is all waste material anyway, so it doesn't matter that I've glued something to the side of this. Now, secondly, I could have reduced this and brought it down and made it so that I wasn't wasting as much wood because when we do this now, I'm going to cut these out into individual pieces, smaller sections, like I'll cut the R out and so on and so forth, so that when it comes to the clamping portion of this, I can clamp one at a time, or I'll clamp more than one at a time, but I'll be able to clamp individually over each letter instead of trying to go over the whole mass of the project and know that it's clamped. So the next step for this is over to the bandsaw. We're going to cut it out, cut it loose, and then start doing the other pieces. Okay, so I decided to put a juice groove on the back side of this. So if they decide they don't want to cut on the good side, they can use that for display purposes, and then they can, you know, cut on the back side and have a juice groove so the juice don't run all over. Secondly, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. If I have, great. If not, I want to. One thing that people don't tell you, I don't think enough, or I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this, it's the cleanup on your male and your female parts. You have to go around with an X-Acto knife, a wire brush, whatever you can come up with, to clean out and around both male and female pieces. If you have any fur or any fuzz left over, that's something that's going to prevent you from seeding your male into the female. So cleanup and cleaning the pieces, the male, female, are super important. Let's cut this juice groove. All right, so here's the board. It's not going to fit in here, but it will allow me to pour the stuff over the top. Now, when we do this, there's one thing I want you to remember. And it's a rhyme, and I want you to remember this rhyme. The rhyme is this. When it comes to inlays, side grain is a pain. Just remember that. So before I flip this thing over, there's a few spots in here that I am not going to point out, but there's a few spots that are not quite tight that I would hope. Again, end grain's a pain. The end grain moved on me. I lost a couple of little pieces, but I did some repair work. Basically, put a little glue in, do some sanding, and you correct the spots. So let me just get this on here, just so the bottom is complete. And then I'm going to flip it over and we're going to see what we get. Letting that soak in. And I will submerge this. I'm doing this way just for the sake of the video. All right, let's see what we got. Let me make sure I'm turning it the right way for the big reveal. There it is, folks. And as I said, I'm not going to show you where the spots are. You can look at them and find them yourself. Let's run this over here for the other camera. All in all, though, not too shabby. Sapele, black walnut, cherry, Purpleheart. All right, folks, I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this kind of stuff with these videos, with these inlays, let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see some more, maybe some multiple colored inlays that are, you know, overlapping. This one's a pretty basic multicolor, but let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see, and I'll make it happen. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Sure hope James likes this.